Banks may still be closed, but bankers are already at work. Jean Liu leads an international team of RMB experts at Standard Chartered Bank, the world's #2 trade bank. This morning, she's meeting her African colleagues.
It become my daily work, actually, RMB, along with the BNR initiatives. And we talk to the clients in the solutions, and we talk to the regulators, try to embed RMB solutions into what we offered to the clients. Clients has been benefited from these RMB initiatives. When we go to the African countries to meet our corridor bankers locally, RMB is the inevitable topic to our daily work.
Mid-morning at the Beijing branch of the world's largest bank, ICBC. Irina Kulagina, the chief representative of Russia's Pромsvyaz Bank, is exchanging yuan for rubles. Having been in China since the two countries piloted currency trading, she has seen the yuan-ruble trade grow.
Now, for financing in RMB, we have a very substantial portion that we are doing in RMB. Like we're issuing letters of credits in RMB, and we're arranging financing for both sides together with the Chinese banks, also in RMB. And portion of this business is already 58%.
Russia is the first country to offer yuan trading on its currency exchange, important for a future world where oil may not be priced in US dollars.
Even for banking business itself, if we are going to enter Chinese market now, we are no longer limited to ending qualification for a long time. We can get it pretty soon after the opening.
Lunchtime. Sunny Lee, Auscham accountant, is using yuan to pay for goods, something that can be done increasingly in countries ranging from Sri Lanka to Zimbabwe.
When we go traveling abroad, we don't have to take a lot of foreign currency. Local shops take RMB as payment. That is a good trend. For us consumers, RMB internationalization reduces the exchange process, which is more convenient. Nowadays, most people like to travel abroad. There is no need to exchange money beforehand. In the future, I think the yuan's role would grow steadily in the world.
Midday at the mother of all Chinese banks, the central bank, which decides how much money to channel into the 165 trillion yuan money supply. For the yuan to become truly global, there needs to be more trading in the yuan, more payments settled in the yuan, more countries holding the yuan as reserve currency, and the PBOC itself needs to become more transparent in its policies. Huang Yiping, PBOC advisor and banking veteran, tells us the key ingredient to getting currency reforms back on track.
What you really need is a kind of level of confidence. So if you really want to internationalize your currency, you need a strong economy, you need a liquid and a large financial market, but you also need a good institution to protect property rights. Whether or not we will become a dominant reserve currency like the US dollar, I think that's a very long-term story.
Venezuela's recent announcement it would switch to yuan for trade settlement from the US dollar is another sign of the yuan's street cred. But does that mean the de-US dollar process is in motion? That would partly depend on what happens under the Trump administration.
There are two formal ways of referring to China's currency. Renminbi is the official name, but when the Chinese people buy things, they say yuan. The yuan is a unit of the renminbi, like dimes, quarters and dollars here in the United States. Some tourists in Times Square find saying yuan rather easier than renminbi.
Renminbi. Renminbi.
Rim or something, I don't know. What's it say?
Running renminbi.
The renminbi. Fantastic.
Good thing the Chinese also have another name for the yuan that's easier to say, kwai.
And I believe, coming originally from England as I do, that this gives me an advantage in understanding this, because British people buy things in pounds, but the currency around the world is known as sterling. See, it's the same thing. Yuan, renminbi, pound sterling.
When he was campaigning to win the White House, President Trump was very rude about China and its currency, accusing Beijing of planning to manipulate the renminbi in the future, deliberately devaluing it to make China's exports cheaper for overseas customers.
Like China is the grand master of devaluation.
Since then, President Xi and Trump have met in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. They got along famously, holding frank discussions on trade and the DPRK, which continues to focus minds in Beijing and Washington, D.C. President Trump is slated to visit Beijing very soon.
So now that he's moved out of Trump Tower and into the White House, what effect, if any, has President Trump had on the renminbi?
Yeah, it's highly indirect.
Analyst Dan Alpert says while the renminbi tracks a basket of currencies these days, the US dollar is a major component of that basket. So while for most of this year the renminbi has spiked against the dollar, in the same time frame it's declined quite sharply against the European single currency, for example.
They have the best of both worlds. They have an advantageous trading position with currencies that have risen against the dollar, which has weakened considerably since the Trump administration began. On the other hand, they're pretty much in the same boat as they always were with the dollar.
The dollar initially soared after Trump's 2016 election, but his failure to get legislation through the Congress, the Russia investigation, and an economic rebound in Europe have hit the once mighty greenback hard, sending it tumbling.
At the end of the day, China cannot abandon its mercantilistic structure. It has to continue to export. It has created so much overcapacity, and it doesn't really have the political environment in which it can constrain that capacity.
The view of many in the US is that the Belt and Road Initiative is partly an attempt to find additional markets outside the developed world, even though those same folks say Beijing still needs demand from developed countries to help it employ more and more people and reduce overcapacity.
In other words, what China needs more than anything is consumerism, pretty much wherever it can find it. And with the renminbi rising a little bit against the dollar, that helps with imports, but it's not really enough to stop Americans buying Chinese goods. And with the renminbi falling against the euro and other non-dollar currencies, well, that simply helps China sell its exports more.
China often talks about the renminbi having become a major global reserve currency like the dollar, the euro and the Swiss franc, a move that would give China more clout in politics as well as trade. Some media pundits hype this, saying Beijing's on a quest to displace the dollar. A slim majority on Wall Street see that as inevitable, given China's size and influence in the world. But not so fast, says Dan Alpert. It's most likely a long way off.
Yeah, I don't believe the Chinese currency will become the global reserve currency. That is something I think that is basically a media conceit and a conceit of a few less informed, non-economic focused analysts. The number of trades, both directions, that get resolved in Chinese currency is infinitesimally small in comparison to the dollar.
To become the world's dominant currency, he says China would have to be a major importer as well as an exporter over a sustained period. Renminbi would have to be freely traded on global exchanges.
I don't believe that free exchangeability and free convertibility of the RMB is in the offing, at least over the next decade, and probably within our lifetimes.
Of course, one sure way to test if the renminbi is ready for the world stage or not is to see if a New York taxi driver can even recognize a yuan note when offering one as payment for a fare.
Thank you very much. How much is that?
It's 6.30.
6.30. I'd like to pay in Chinese currency, if I may. Is that
Chinese
okay?
currency? No, we don't use Chinese currency. We use only dollars.